Hey everybody, this is Jeremy with the Erasmus Expeditions. Thank you for tuning in. I haven't done a video like this in a while, but I'm going to try to sit down and show you my process for creating a custom monster for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I've had a couple of people ask me how I come up with my own monsters, how to change things out of the book and know that it's going to fit right, and all of those kinds of things. So I'm going to try to address some of that. Now, this is something I've kind of developed over the years of running games, and I have a very specific way that I do it. I also use a lot of shorthand in my notes, and I'm going to try my best to show you the different materials that I'm kind of pulling this information from and where I'm going to be compiling it into an Excel document that I created. So let's take a look at the document first here. So this is the Excel sheet that I use. You can see hit points, size, initiative, armor class, speed, proficiency, CR, XP, most of the information you typically need. I do print these out on actual paper. Being able to print one single page like this that has 3 different monster entries on it for me is great. What I'm doing specifically, the monster that I'm trying to make here, is a Redcap for my Beneath the Banner Shadow campaign. This is a type of creature from English folklore. They've been in other editions, earlier editions of the game, and I couldn't find one from 5th edition that really sat right with me. But I'm going to kind of design my own from the ground up to illustrate my process and to kind of make it what I really am looking for. The first thing that I typically do when I'm doing a custom monster that is based on something that's grounded in real folklore or history is research. If you're a DM, honestly, research is a tool that you should lean on, in my opinion. You can take it too far. It's very easy to do, but for the most part, you'll be able to find things out about history, folklore, mythology that will blow your mind, and you'll find that you don't have to do very much to it to make it viable gaming material. One of the first things that I always do when I'm doing this kind of thing is I go to Wikipedia. It is certainly not an infallible source of information, but it often is a treasure trove for this kind of stuff. I went to Wikipedia and researched Redcap here, and I'm basically just going to skim through this, and I'm just looking for things that kind of jump off the page. Anything specifically that seems to be a direct correlation into Dungeons & Dragons. So, for example, grizzly hair streaming down his shoulders, iron boots, a pike staff in his left hand. Okay, cool. So we know that this creature, if it's going to be traditional, is going to be armed with a pike staff. A red cap on his head, iron boots. Maybe he has a little bit of an armor, bolster up his armor class. Scroll down where you guys can see that a little bit better above my head here. He is unaffected by human strength. That could be a really interesting ability mechanically. I'm not sure exactly how to translate that yet, but what I'm going to go ahead and do is come over here to my Excel sheet, and I'm just going to make a note in just a random place. Let's see, unaffected by human strength. Now obviously we can extend this to humanoids whenever we go to actually do the mechanic for it. For now, that's a good enough note to kind of remember to come back to it. Soaking his cap in their blood. Now this is one of the reasons why I kind of wanted the red cap in particular. This part of the mythology I had actually already, or folklore, I had already heard. And it certainly hits the right kind of notes that I'm looking for in the specific encounter for this campaign. So it's definitely something that we're going to be doing something with for the encounter. Maybe not mechanically, but we'll see. He can be driven away by words of scripture or by the brandishing of a crucifix. Okay, so getting kind of vampire similarities here as far as turning undead. So maybe there's some kind of vulnerability in there, or some kind of aversion that they have to clerics, paladins, things of that nature. So aversion to holy items is good enough. Which cause him to utter a dismal yell and vanish in flames, leaving behind a large tooth. Okay, now I know one of the write-ups, third-party write-ups that I came across had something about a tooth, and we'll get to that in a minute, but it's certainly an interesting thing that I would like to work in. So I'm going to go back over to the Excel document and drop that in. Possible attack, dismal yell. Could be something to work with, possibly. Also, pike. I'm going to make a note about the iron boots. I'm going to pop back over to the tab real quick just to see if there's any other things that I may be able to kind of skim off of this that could be interesting. Prominent teeth, so very likely could have some kind of bite, attack. And I know that I'm going to be adding some other stuff to this, and I don't want to overload it. That's one thing that is that you have to be a little mindful of when you're doing this process, and it's something that it's a trap that I fall into often. You end up giving a monster or a bad guy too many options, too many things to do, and you forget things inevitably, which is always a disappointment. Okay, so I think we're okay as far as what we've gotten from the Wikipedia article. I know I want this particular Redcap be a Circle of the Spores druid, or at least kind of themed in that direction. It's going to make sense with the environment that I've got this happening in, and redcaps and toadstool mushrooms and things always kind of seems to be hand in hand in my mind for some reason, but it fits the setting that I'm running this particular campaign in. So he's going to have fungal abilities, and the next thing that I'm going to show you is how I settled upon this character's name, because he's not going to be just any redcap. He's going to be a particular named redcap. So knowing that I wanted him to be mushroom themed, I knew that there were, the classic toadstool mushrooms that have the red caps with the white spots. So I went in and typed redcap mushroom, and right here in the very, very top is the one that I was talking about, which is also known as fly agaric. Agaric sounds like an awesome old world name, so for my tastes, that fits. And this guy is now known as Agaric, the redcap. It fits, it works for me, it rolls off the tongue really well, it sounds old, and I like it. So the next tab, I did happen across a discussion on Reddit. I think somebody was designing a 5th edition redcap, and one of the very first comments below that was that there is a redcap in the Curse of Strahd module. So we're just going to kind of scroll through here real quick and get an idea for anything that might be interesting. Particularly anything that lines up well with what we've already been designing. Small Fae definitely checks out. Hide armor. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. CR of 1. That's definitely much too low for what I'm looking for, but we can fix that with some of the other parts we're going to kind of tack on here. Heavy weapons. Okay, that makes great sense. Like they're unaffected by human strength. Maybe that's also not necessarily just a defensive ability. Maybe that's also potentially offensive. Irreligious. Wow. Irreligious. Redcaps are bitter, blasphemous creatures and have disadvantage on any character openly wearing a holy symbol. Yeah, that's a neat ability. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I'm going to go ahead and make a note of both of these things just before we get to kind of deep in this process. Holy. That'll be enough to jog my memory into remembering that, I think. Whoa. My fingers sometimes get away from me. They kind of do their own thing on the keyboard here. Let's go back over to this tab. Redcap regeneration. While wearing its red cap, he regains 5 hit points at the start of his turn if he has at least a hit point. Maybe we definitely have to find something that the cap does. I mean, it's in the name. Why would you not? Iron boot, bludgeoning weapon. Maybe that's interesting. The boot as a weapon. I'm not used to talking to myself while I'm doing this. Mark it for a potential attack as well. Okay, that's pretty much the end of that. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff to glean out of there. I'm going to go over to another iteration that somebody made. I don't know if there is a notation. Looks like there is a Reddit username, Shylock the 5th. So this is the one that had the note about the redcap's tooth. It says, when a redcap dies, it leaves behind a single tooth. Anyone wearing this tooth gains advantage on charisma intimidation checks versus Fae. Now, in this particular campaign that I am running, Fae have had a fairly integral part that they've been kind of playing, and it may or may not come up in the future. So I really like this particular feature. So I'm going to take that whole cloth and apply it to this creature. We're just going to leave this for later. I can format this better once I'm kind of done with this video and everything. Part of the process with this is always finding the shorthand that I want to put here. Intimidation versus Fae. Okay, that gets that point across. Back to this write-up. Okay, let's check out what he's got going on under the hood. Literally. CR3, that's better, but it's still not where I need this guy to be. I think I settled on a CR10, maybe an 11. So we'll definitely have to do some bolstering. Damage resistance against poisons. That makes really good sense for this particular version, since he's kind of all spore based and fungal based. Poison would likely be something that they have resistance to. Okay, so resist. I promise I can spell poison. Okay, I'll do a reformatted version and kind of show it to you again as a separate part that I'll edit in here. The athletics would be a possible way to illustrate that they were stronger than mortals. Intimidation, I can see, I guess, with the fact that they have a cap that's dripping in blood, it would be pretty intimidating. Powerful build. Oh, let's go back over to the tab so you guys can see what I'm seeing. Advantage on saving throws against being knocked prone and all strength checks. Yeah, that works pretty well. Rage. Can enter a rage as a bonus action on its turn. Okay, cool. So it's like just the most basic part of the barbarian rage, which makes sense. It could work really well with what we read from them. And blood cap. The red cap dips its cap into the blood of a slain creature and channels its power. As a bonus action on its turn, red cap bathes its cap in the blood of a dead creature, gaining +1 to attack rolls, damage rolls, and its natural armor. I like the beginning of that ability a lot. Bonus action that it has to be a dead creature, likely something that has been recently slain. Don't know if +1 to attack rolls, damage rolls, and natural armor is what I want for the rest of that ability, but it's a good start at the very least. Cap, dip, bonus. We're just gonna put this in here as a placeholder at least. I'm gonna put rage-ish as a note here. Unaffected by human strength. So definitely something like that. Human strength in combat would be most illustrated from grappling and trying to knock things prone, shoving, those kinds of attacks. So this makes really good sense. Moving back to the tab here, multi-attack. That makes really good sense. But also as a druid, not sure. We'll see. Okay, this is kind of a breakout box here. Variant Redcap Advancement. A Redcap who has seen many battles is likely to have dipped his cap in the blood of many enemies. You may scale the Redcap's strength based on the Redcap strength table below. Okay, cool. And then it has it broken down by like number of kills, how to adjust their hit points, CR, the hit bonus, armor class even goes up. Okay, that's really cool. That'll be a nice way to kind of dial in the power level of where I need this monster to be for this encounter. So I think I'll come back and revisit that as I'm kind of making final adjustments and things. So I'm going to shift over to another tab, Circle of Spores. To be honest, I don't know what book Circle of Spores Druid is actually even in. I very well may have it sitting on the shelf right behind me. Again, I don't want to create a Circle of Spores Druid. I just want to look through and see if there are any kind of abilities or reskinning of things that could be useful for kind of what I'm doing. Animate dead, gaseous form. Gaseous form could be interesting. That could be very interesting and could fit rather well for our particular little agaric. So let's see. Animate dead. Now, animate dead, I had already kind of had an idea. It'll be another thing that I go to. I have the physical book laid out for that. So I'm going to come back to that. Halo of Spores. Surrounded by invisible necrotic spores that are harmless. Reaction. Damage. I don't think I want him to rely too heavily on damage magic. I think the pike gives a certain expectation for maybe how he's going to fight. So I think I'm going to kind of lean away from that for this particular build. Symbiotic entity, channel into spores. Not entirely what I'm looking for here. We'll move on here. Fungal Infestation. At 6th level, your spores gain the ability to infest a humanoid corpse. Now we're talking. Okay, so now coming back to that kind of idea that I had for the encounter that is going to take place in a crypt. And the idea was that he would be able to bring some of the buried warriors down in this crypt, not back to life necessarily like undeath, but actually by causing fungal growth at such a rapid rate that it kind of filled the void of the empty armor and the skeletal structure and actually kind of animated that into being. Split up the party's action economy a little bit so they're not able to just focus fire just this one particular target. So we'll keep reading this because this definitely sounds more in line with kind of what I was looking for. This creature uses the zombie statistics. Nope. I had a better idea, and I'll touch on that in just a minute. Okay, so I really like this idea. Fungal friends. Okay, everything else is kind of beyond a level where I'm planning on putting this. I think that's probably good from this. The last little bit here that I wanted to touch on is going to be straight out of the 5th edition monster manual, the Myconids, the mushroom people. When I was going through the possible ideas that could kind of help build this particular monster, one of the things that I came across under the Myconids is the Spore Servant template. Now, 3rd edition was huge on templates. There were tons of templates, and it led to some really interesting monster creation, sometimes a little wacky and out there, but you could build some really cool monsters using those templates. And that's something that I've noticed with 5th edition that there's not as much of. I don't think we need like a gelatinous template. That might be pushing it just a little, but something like this kind of makes sense in context, and I think it's going to be really useful for building a secondary creature. Spore Servants, and I'm going to mark the page number as well. I think that about does it, honestly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go focus on this and show you what it looks like when I've gotten it put into the right amount of formatting for running it in my game. Okay, so I've taken some time to sit down, go through my usual process, and kind of get this better formatted and finalized. Again, I know there's a lot of shorthand in here. This is for my personal ability to kind of run this at the table, and space is certainly limited, so I have to truncate a lot of things. So you can see at the very top, we have the name Agar the Redcap. The black bars between the strength and the constitution, that denotes what saving throws he is going to be proficient with. Right above my head here and behind my head, you can see the proficiency in skills. I have the passive perception listed first. Athletics, intimidation, and nature are the skills that I went with. I went with a double proficiency in intimidation. I want this creature to have an unexplainable presence about it that is a little frightening and unnerving. When you're talking about something that dips its hat in the blood of its victims and is like, has a row of very sharp pointy teeth, but it's small. So this has a tendency of potentially being a little cartoony, almost Smurf-like. I'm really going to push the description towards being a little disturbing and dark, macabre. And I think having an added bonus in intimidation can mechanically back that up. CR9 is kind of where I needed this creature to be, so that's what I settled on. I have the XP listed. We're doing milestone XP advancement in this campaign, so it probably won't matter, but I like to go ahead and list it anyway. Hit points, about 110. They are small sized. They have an initiative bonus of a +4. The proficiency bonus is a +4 just beneath that. Speed of 25 feet. Again, they are small. They also wear iron boots, which is... I'll get into that in just a second. I gave him a 14 armor class. It's literally just all from his dexterity, but could be bolstered through one of his abilities that I'll get to in just a moment. The attacks that I've given him: Pike, Bite, and Dismal Yell. I went ahead and took that directly from the Wikipedia and kind of dropped that in. I thought that was effective. The Pike is straight out of the player's handbook as far as its stats go. However, it does have the notation that the extra rage bonus can be applied to the damage, and that goes for the Bite as well. The Bite I dealt as a D6 just to kind of give it a little bit of teeth, literally. On the note of attacks, overlisted under feats, you can see multi-attack. So each turn he'll be able to take 2 attacks with his pike and 1 with his bite. This is going to make him fairly dangerous in combat. This is a lot of damage, but that's kind of the point. I wanted him to be a nasty frontline combatant, even though he seems counter to that whenever they first look upon him. You're talking about something that likes to soak his hat in the blood of his victims. I would imagine that harsh, visceral combat is a necessity to get that across. The Dismal Yell I've just based off of Thunderwave, the spell, and then just tweaked it a little bit to make it fit a little better. So it's a 48 attack, it's 5-foot radius, so just immediately around this individual. It's thunder damage, just like Thunderwave. Con save, DC of 14. Save for half damage. And then instead of being pushed back 10 feet, I went with prone. Again, it seems like it would fit a creature like this much better. He wants to get you on the ground, he wants to be able to attack you, and if you're wielding a holy symbol of some kind, then this helps get you away from him. So I'm going to hit on the treasure aspect of it. Now, this box oftentimes is not literally used for treasure. I usually put spell information there sometimes. It's just kind of like almost like a catch-all for things that don't fit in this other box. But in this particular case, a lot of his abilities are based specifically on items. First up, we have his iron boots. Now, Fey and iron, especially cold iron, typically don't mesh well. Now, they don't really do anything with it in 5th edition that I've been able to find, but in some of the older editions of the game, cold iron actually did additional damage to Fey. They can't break out of restraints that are made of cold iron, things like that. In 5th edition, in my opinion, a lot of the monster designs don't have vulnerabilities baked in. There's a lot of resistance, but you don't see a lot of vulnerabilities, and I think they really missed out on an opportunity. I gave him a vulnerability to cold iron. You can see it right here. But because the iron boots are actually part of the mythology, I kind of wanted to try to find a way to incorporate that. So why or how would a creature who has a problem with cold iron be wearing iron boots? And I decided it must be a magical item. So iron boots, it gives all cold iron attacks against him disadvantage, and he gets resistance to the damage from them. Now this is a little strange because I also gave him the vulnerability, so basically the damage would be a wash, but the attacks would have disadvantage. More importantly, this is an item that the players could end up with, and it could be beneficial to them further down the road. The tooth gain advantage versus Fey, and then his cap uses a reaction in order to dip it in the blood of a fresh victim, and the one that I'm basing this off of made this so that it gave a +1 to attack, damage, and armor class. I wanted to beef that up a little bit because this is a higher CR monster and because he's supposed to be like a specific Redcap. So I actually based it more on Bless and Mage armor. Instead, it grants a +3 to his armor class, as Mage armor would typically do. And then the +3 to armor class and saves. It's a little powerful because Bless is a 1d4, so it's a little bit ahead of the curve, but again, this is a CR9 monster, and I think making the cap an essential function of this creature fits really well with kind of what I want. This kind of stuff is always a little bit of a guessing game because you don't really usually have a chance to playtest it much. Moving on, under the special abilities and notes, right here just above my shoulder, I gave the immunity to poison and the prone condition because it represents being able to ignore the strength of men. I rolled into the rage. It's a bonus action in order to enter the rage, and then you can see it gives resistance to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing, as well as a +4 to the damage. Next, I have the Old Ways. He has disadvantage to attack anybody who has their holy symbol out. I like that ability. I like the way that it could play out. The last thing is Infestation. It's a reaction to use. It takes a body and converts it to a spore servant. So this is Agaric the Redcap. I feel really good about all of this. I'm excited to run my party up against that. So hopefully I reveal all of this during the game, and none of this will contain spoilers for things that may happen after they encounter this creature. But whatever. So let's wrap this up. So that's how I put together a custom monster. This has been me putting together Agaric the Redcap for my Beneath the Banners Shadow campaign right here on the channel. So until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.